Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar for today. My name is Cindy McDonald. I'm a commissioner for the American Institute of Certified Educational Planners, and today we're going to present for you a webinar, the CEP assessment, designed to help you show what you know. And that's an important aspect of what this is all about. We have over 100 people who have registered for this webinar, so we know it's a topic that you are all very interested in. Your presenters are Stephen R. Antonoff, myself, Cindy McDonald, and Rachel Sobel. And Steve has been a pioneer in college counseling for many, many years. He was instrumental in implementing and designing and advocating for our profession, professional development and growth, and what we need to be doing as professions. He is a commission member, he's an author of several books, and he has 35 years of experience as an IEC instructor for UC Irvine certificate program. Rachel Sobel is also a commission member. She's a licensed social worker and psychotherapist. She has over 30 years of experience. She is also an expert on colleges, learning disabilities, and therapeutic options. And myself, I am a UCLA instructor for the college counseling certificate. I've been doing college and financial aid consulting for over 30 years, and I'm very glad to be in the presence of Steve and Rachel and helping to present this information. So welcome, Steve. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Good to moderate this. We've been working for a couple decades to try to raise the standards for our profession, and the assessment is an important part of that. And so all of us welcome all of you to this webinar and the ability to learn a little bit more about the assessment.
So the next question is that many of you are asking, am I ready? That's what we're here to talk about today. You know, are you ready to take that next step and to become a certified educational planner? In addition to this webinar that we're presenting you today, we would like to also recommend that you check out our previous webinar about becoming a CEP. And it's more just in general about what a certified educational planner is. We interviewed several people who had gone through the process, got their perspectives on it, and it is posted on our website, what you need to know about becoming a certified educational planner. We'll also be posting these slides and this recording on the AICEP website. So you'll have these slides to refer to. There is a lot of depth. There's a lot of information that Rachel and Steve and I have put together for you for today. We won't have time to go over everything that's on the slides, but you will have access to these afterwards. So the next step, and the very first step when you're interested and want to look at becoming a CEP, the first step is an initial call with a member of the assessment committee. And in that call, you're able to talk about what some of your questions might be. First, you have to be cleared to take the assessment, so you go through an application process, and then the committee determines, okay, you're ready to go to the next step. And you'll talk to one of the members of the assessment committee. They'll help you set up a place, a date, and a time for the administration of your assessment. Also know that assessments are given at national conferences. A lot of times people will take them at NACAC, IECA, HECA, other conferences. And also, oftentimes you can take them privately in a CEP office. So somebody that you know, I know I've had people come to my office, Rachel, I know you've had, and Steve. So you have a lot of choices in terms of when you want to take the assessment and where you can take the assessment. These discussions with a member of the assessment committee usually last about an hour. And through this, in this hour, the assessment questions are reviewed with you and sample responses are made available. So that's part of what we're doing for you here today. So there are two parts of the assessment. There's institutional knowledge and professional knowledge. And there are, let's go back. There we go. So note that responses and evaluator comments included here are taken from different candidates' assessments. Examples are composites and presented for the purpose of explaining the exam. So we're going to go into dive deep into these and give you a little bit more information about those as well. So are you ready? Let's go. So part one is institutional knowledge, and Rachel is going to share information with us about that.
Thanks so much, Cindy. Everybody, I'm so delighted to be here, and I'm glad that you're on this webinar with us. If you turn to the next slide, please, you'll see that this is really designed to be informative, but also there's an element of lightness to taking this exam. We're going to run some tests, blood work, a CAT scan, and the SATs. So when we are assessing institutional knowledge, as part of your application, next slide, please. As part of your application, you are asked to identify 30 colleges that you know well. It does not need to be the 30 colleges that you visited most recently, but choose colleges that you're comfortable with, that you're familiar with, and that you actually know a lot about and want to share that knowledge. From that list of 30, the assessment committee is going to identify 4 colleges, schools, or programs for your assessment. Each assessment is designed for the individual applicant who is writing the assessment. From those 4, you will choose 2 to write about. And there are 5 questions that we would like, 5 questions that should be answered. And it also is designed as a way to help you think about each of the schools as you're studying. So the first question, Cindy, is please write about what type of student might be best served at this college or university. So our next slide is going to show an example of a response that an applicant actually gave in her assessment. And as you can see, Cindy mentioned that much of this is very text heavy. We don't want to read slides to you, but all of this will be posted on the website within the week, we hope, so that you'll have access to the complete responses. But the highlights in this question of what type of a student might be happy and best served at Sewanee, the applicant highlights that it's a small school, it has a conservative atmosphere, big Greek life. The school itself is isolated, so it really needs to be for a kid who's going to be comfortable in a quiet, nature-filled environment. And it's also good for an outdoorsy kid. A kid who really wants the hustle bustle of a city is not going to fit comfortably at Sewanee. The second question, what are the standout features or the attributes of the colleges or universities that you're recommending? Or I'm sorry, that you're writing about. I apologize. The colleges that you're writing about. And this applicant chose to write about NYU. And in response to this question, she highlights the global awareness, lots of opportunities for research, the specialty schools that are unique to NYU, and here she highlights Tisch, Stern, Brooklyn Polytech, and Gallatin. And you'll notice she's not espousing on each one of these, but recognizing that these are unique to NYU. Standout features, keep that in mind. And also the fact that it's urban. So a student who would be happy at NYU is not going to be happy at Swanee and vice versa. The third question asks you to describe the physical plant and the influences of the surrounding communities on the college or university. So this applicant chose to write about Syracuse. And in his write-up, he said that Syracuse is an urban campus in a medium-sized upstate New York city. So in your mind, you have a vision of what that's going to look like. He also highlights that there are two SUNY programs, the Upstate Medical Center and the School for Environmental Science and Forestry, that are actually on the Syracuse campus. So again, these are parts of the physical environment. Syracuse students are going to run into students from these other two schools, and that's part of the culture of the school. He also underscores that there are retail shops and restaurants on campus that are frequented by not just students, but by community members as well. Syracuse University is one of the largest employers in the city, which, as you can see, it has an impact on the economics of it, and the students there matter. They count on students for income and for opportunity in the city. And Syracuse would not be Syracuse without highlighting the big sports impact. So that's underscored in this as well. And if you've ever been to a Syracuse football game, which I will attest to having gone, as Syracuse is my alma mater, everybody lives for football in the fall and basketball in the winter. And that's very well stated in this applicant's write-up on that. Fourth question, in general, what are the admission criteria? What are the general parameters of a student that you would recommend for this university? And our next applicant, again, chose to write about NYU. And those who know NYU well know that the selectivity has increased significantly over the past several years. So students are expected to have honors and AP classes on their transcripts. They're expected to have high SAT or ACT scores. And in some of the more selective schools that we talked about, that the previous student talked about in her NYU write-up, some of those schools require scores to be even higher. NYU is known for their campuses, their international campuses in Abu Dhabi and in Shanghai. They are an inner city, center city, extraordinarily urban, best city in the world, take your pick. NYU is a city school. It doesn't get much more urban than that. And this applicant highlighted that as well. And they also noted that kids who succeed there and kids who are admitted have very strong extracurricular activities. They are highly motivated, and they are very goal-directed. The fifth question asks you to name 2 or 3 schools that are similar to the universities, and describe the reasons for the similarities. So our next applicant chose to compare schools with Wheaton College in Massachusetts. And here, the 2 schools that she identified are Connecticut College and Skidmore. In her write-up, she states that all schools are on the East Coast, all are small residential colleges, all engage students in learning, and she gave Skidmore as an option that's slightly larger, but still it would be a good overlap school with Wheaton. Some people have asked us what are some of the responses that the evaluation team offers to candidates, and here's one that was given to a candidate who wrote about BU. This candidate knows the facts about BU, but more than that, I like that he or she understands the sort of student who thrives there. I can see this candidate talking to students and parents about the differences between colleges. The candidate spices descriptive material with interesting tidbits about the school. If we don't do that in our offices, the list presentation can be pretty boring. So that covers what the questions that are in the institutional knowledge, how they're assessed, and as you can see, in each one of the questions, the committee is not looking for reams of information, but just evidence that you understand the school, the students who are going to be successful there, and other possibilities that you could offer to the student and family. So now we move to the heavy lifting part of the assessment, and that's the professional knowledge piece, and Steve is going to take it from here for now.
Thank you, Rachel. Just a comment about the first part. What we have done in this webinar is taken different pieces from different exams. So as Rachel pointed out, we identified the 4 schools from your list of 30. You then pick 2, and you are going to be answering all of the 5 questions about those 2 schools. So if Wheaton was one of your schools, then we would ask you to compare Wheaton with, or to give examples of schools that are similar to Wheaton. If NYU is one of the schools that you chose, all 5 questions will be dealing with NYU. We feel like this is the fairest way to assess, and what we're looking for is the candidate, are you able to visualize the college on a roadmap of colleges, and the 5 questions that are asked are the ones that we found over the years to be best able to distinguish those people who know the college from those that don't. The second part of the exam is the case study. And I want to make the point that you will be given 2 cases, and you will be asked 3 questions that we'll go over in a minute about those 2 cases. Let me say generally that what we hear most commonly from those who take the assessment is that this part of the assessment is really what we do in our offices, and this is and we're trying to assess the ability to take hold of a case and to share some factors about it. In general, I want to say that all of our cases are fairly short. In fact, they're probably best called vignettes as opposed to cases. They're 4, 5, 6 paragraphs typically. We try hard to make the cases mainstream. In other words, there are no cases where someone has to find an archaeology program in Delaware or something like that. It's they're pretty common. The cases vary in terms of the type of student. In other words, introvert, extrovert, a person who's a real scholar, a person who wants high energy, a person who needs a lot of support, et cetera, et cetera. and they vary in terms of their admission credentials. So there are some students that are at the top of their class in every way, and other students that are not. To give you a sample, you will be able to read at your leisure this case of Eva Jones Chow, and it's on 2 slides, and I just want to kind of summarize. When you have a chance to read it, you will learn that this is a student who has about a 3.8 GPA. She's 18th in her class of 700. She has scores 650, 780. She has taken 3 subject tests, and you have the scores. You are given the classes that she is taking during her junior year and what she's going to be taking during her first semester senior year. You're told that she's active in the business in DECA. She also has community service. You're told that she's not necessarily a scholar, but she works hard and she loves school. You're told that the parents see a top-tier college in her future. She doesn't really know what she wants to study, social science perhaps. She's thinking of medium size. She would like a lot of energy and spirit, internships. She's open as to location. As far as cost, it's not a major factor to this family. On the other hand, you're told from one of her parents that if she could possibly get a merit scholarship, that would be great. That's typical, and when you have a chance to look at this, you'll be able to flesh out some of the things that I've just highlighted. And then you are asked 3 questions about each case. So on the screen now, you will see the first question: what general characteristics would you be looking for in colleges for this student? This is an overview. This is your chance to pull the major aspects of the vignette and share it with our readers. So, for example, the next slide will give you a sample of a response to that question. So you will see that the person has said that Eva has a fairly rigorous schedule, SATs in the higher percentiles. That said, this person indicates that she probably is, quote, average in terms of the very most competitive colleges. The person points out there's a clear thread of leadership and other things about the case. So question 1, just a professional assessment of sort of a summary of what the case is all about. Question number two is really in some ways the heart of this section, and the question is: suggest 3 to 5 specific college recommendations appropriate for this student, and support your rationale for each option. As you no doubt are thinking as you're listening to this, there are many colleges that would be right for Eva. We all are from different parts of the country, different parts of the world. We have different visions of colleges and the possibilities. What we're asking for here is, if you're talking to peers, if you're talking to, and in fact, which I will say in a moment, the evaluators are peers. What are some colleges that you might suggest for Eva? So if we go to the next, slide, you'll see we just put a couple of examples of schools that might work for Eva. So one candidate thought American University would be appropriate. And you'll, when you have a chance to read this, you'll notice that the candidate is connecting American with the student. So her enthusiasm, the fact that she's interested in social sciences, the fact that she's a hard worker but still wants to have time with other things and activities, makes American connected to Eva for that person. Another person thought Boston University might be good. And again, the connection between Eva and BU, the opportunities, broad range of classes, since she's really unknown, is not clear on what she wants to major in. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see that still another person is suggesting the University of Rochester, and connecting Eva with Rochester via medium size, good advising, a fairly economically diverse town, so she could be involved in community service. So what we're really looking for is your ability to take hold of some of the major aspects of the case, and to write for your colleagues some suggestions and why the suggestions are a good match for the student. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see the final question that we asked, which is list any other points that should possibly be considered in working with this student. And the first thing I want to say about that is there may not be anything else, but there may be. There may be things that you're thinking about that you would like to do with Eva. There are some cases where a little bit of extra time is going to have to be given to the parents who may have a expectation of admission which is not in sync with 2018 admission standards. So if we go to the next slide, you will see that here's some actual examples of things that candidates have said about this particular case. So the first one is similar to what I've just said, that family might need a discussion of prestige and rankings and how that works. In number two, you'll see other points that the candidate feels need to be mentioned about the cases. Let me also say that we are, well, let's go to the next slide, and then I can include that here's still another consideration, another response to question number 3. I'm mindful of expectations versus realism. Eva has done well, should be lauded for her accomplishments. The reality is that doing well is average for ultra-competitive colleges. Note that this writer, you can feel that this is someone who is wise and who has perspectives that can be brought to the table to help Eva and her family through this process. The next slide is the actual way that we go about scoring. And let me say about evaluations generally. Again, these are we spend a good deal of time training our readers There are 2 or 3 readers for every candidate. They're read anonymously. You're asked to put a number, a series of numbers and letters on your word processing document that you use to do your exam. So you're writing for your peers. We look at and we emphasize with our readers fairness. We emphasize that these are adult learners. All of us can forget something and we don't remember. We understand. We also understand that there are different learning styles. We understand that for many people, this is the first test they've taken in a long time, and so there may be stress about it. What we're trying to do is be fair, and we want to be able to say, can this candidate, taking the things that are available in the case study, can the candidate take those things and work with a limited amount of information to come up with some reasonable responses to those 3 questions. We're looking for sound advice. We're looking for informed advice. We're not looking for memorization. We're looking for wisdom, and we're looking for sensitivity to the student needs. The next slide, you'll see actually some comments that an evaluator makes. If one of our evaluators thinks that someone's assessment is a little bit lower, we talk. We have a system of analysis which centers on fairness and really understanding the needs of the people that are taking the test. And the next slide is the final sample of comments from the evaluation team. Notice, I love that the candidate emphasized types of internships and work experiences. That's the second part of the exam. Now I want to turn it back to Rachel, who's going to talk a little bit about study tips and things that we've learned about preparation for the assessment.
Thanks, Steve. You'll see that all of this webinar, the previous webinar, and an FAQ sheet is available on the AICEP website. So please, again, you'll have access to this shortly. Click on the link, and that should give you a lot of additional information, and it may help refresh your memory with other answers to questions that you may have. What we have done is we've certainly asked lots of people who have taken the CEP assessment what was helpful to them. How did they study for this? That's a question that we get asked a lot. And these are suggestions. This is what some of recent candidates have offered to us. Some of these will work for you, some of them won't. And what we do ask is if you have something that's not on this list, share it with us so we can include it, because if it works for you, it may well work for somebody else. The ones that I just really want to highlight are, it's very helpful if you talk with somebody who has taken the assessment recently, because it's very fresh and very new to them. The whole process is. And what we have heard more than anything else is that this actually was a great opportunity for that individual person to really consolidate their knowledge and show what they know, demonstrate and learn that they really do more, they know more than they realize on a daily basis. When we're all in our offices, we can call up information very quickly, and what we can't call up, we can always access one way or another through other resources. But what this really helped people see is how much they're able to access immediately. And then they go back and reaffirm what they have learned, what they think they know, with some of these other study guides, study opportunities, I guess. The most important one on this is the very last one. I had fun with it. I merely had to refresh my memory. So trust what you know, enjoy the process. We recognize, as Steve, Cindy, and I all know and can't emphasize enough to you, we know that this is stressful. We know it feels daunting, but we know equally that you will be so proud of yourself, and we positively will be proud that you will become a CEP. So just have a good time and enjoy this. Once you become a CEP, you need to recertify every 5 years. Professional development is a huge part of being a certified educational planner. So as you can see, there's a $75 annual fee to be a CEP. And in the 5th year, there is a fee of $100 to recertify. Your $75 is included in your recertification years, recertification application 5 years after you become a CEP. There is an application. Again, it's available online at aicep.org. And it's very straightforward. In the course of 5 years, you need to have visited 75 sites, whether that's college, schools, therapeutic programs, international programs. You need a total of 75. Of the 75 hours of professional development activities, 35 must be in a face-to-face environment at a workshop, a conference, a seminar, a webinar, an institute, some place where it's not you with either yourself or with a small group of people visiting a site. And that really, again, that's it. Every 5 years, there is usually a large group of people who are recertifying. And again, that process feels daunting. One tip I will share with you that many of us do: when you attend a conference or a workshop or a webinar, just keep track of it so that when you are doing your application for recertification, everything is in one file, whether it's an electronic file or a paper file or both. You have it easily accessible, and then it's no longer a daunting process. So that brings us to the end of our formal presentation. We would love to answer questions if there are some. I'm going to throw it back to Cindy, who is going to moderate this portion of our presentation.
Thank you, Rachel. So I'm going to take off the slides and pull up so that we can see your questions. And let's make this so we're all here. And Anne is also with us and is looking at, has been checking questions as well as we go through. So I'm going to stop sharing. There we go. And it looks like we don't have very many. So Elizabeth asks, is this process the same for school or therapeutic consultants? One of you want to answer that?
Sure, I'll answer that. Steve, you're on mute. Yes, the assessment is specific to your area of specialization and expertise. So throughout the course of this presentation, we've been talking primarily about colleges, but if you are a school consultant or a therapeutic consultant, or even an international consultant, we will recognize that, and we are not going to ask a school consultant to answer college questions. Rather, it will be tailored towards answering school or therapeutic questions on your assessment.
And I want to reemphasize what you just said too, that this is not just one area or another. There are different specialties, and it's not just for independents either. I just came from the international conference, International AC conference, and talked to several several counselors who had been thinking about and were interested in learning more about this. And I imagine many of you are also from other organizations, nonprofit, schools, things like that. So this encompasses many different aspects. So Janice says, I'm in a study group with 5 other ICs and we meet every other month. Would that count as continuing education?
Well, it's hard to say for sure. If it's clear that it's a learning opportunity, if there are experts coming in perhaps, or if there are professional activities that seem worthwhile, the thing about this is that we know that there are lots of different ways to learn, a lot of different ways to develop your expertise. We're just interested in seeing the full range of what you've done, and we're certainly open to hearing about things that we may not know about that really are professional development oriented.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is if you can document and it's like providing a syllabus or something, talk about, who you've had to come visit, which college representatives, the agenda for the meeting, if you can provide that information and documentation, then that could be very key. So Elaine asks, are there any examples specific to therapeutic program case studies answers? So we've shared a lot, as you said, on the college, but are there similar examples available on therapeutic?
There are, and we are planning at some point to have a therapeutic webinar, since there are lots of people that are focused in that area. In the meantime, I would be happy to put someone in touch with people who have been through the therapeutic piece of this, and you could ask them questions about the assessment. Cindy, I do want to mention just a couple of nuts and bolts about this process, just to be sure that everyone is clear on this. Exams or assessments are taken on your laptop. So whether it's at a conference or whether it's in someone's office, you're asked to bring your laptop. You're asked to open up a Word document. We do not have a time limit on the test, but we strongly encourage people to be finished in 4 hours, and that, I know, sounds perhaps like an awful lot of time. On the other hand, we have found that people in our field are very interested in really demonstrating their knowledge, and there are people who want to take time to check their work and so forth. So we are open to and encourage people to take it at a time when they're not rushed. The questions can be answered in any order. So if somebody wants to do an institution first and then a case and back and forth, that's fine. We encourage proctors to have their breaks. Nobody is nobody is tied to their chair with a hot lamp over them. This is informal in the sense that we are we're very willing to have candidates take a walk around the block or do whatever they need to do. We don't allow materials to be used. It's interesting. We did at one point do some trials on letting people go to websites and other materials, and we found that the answers were double or triple the amount of content was double or triple, and we really weren't we weren't learning anything new from the candidate, and so we have said that no materials should be brought in or used during the assessment.
Good. I think that's very helpful to have that further information and clarification. So Amy asks, how would you count a 3-day conference in terms of numbers of hours that add into the 36?
Well, it would be the number of contact hours. So if you're, and I'm generalizing, but typically, and this would be for recertification. Typically, it's the number of contact hours, so that if you're in sessions for 6 hours on a day, then you would have 6 hours of professional development to put on your recertification form.
So you'd be able to put down which session you went to and then be able to, and if there's an extended session, pre-conference session or something, workshop, you could count that too.
Yes, and if it's, if it's an organization that provides CEUs, then typically, you would just complete that, and then for your recertification, you turn in that form, which would show that you had, 12 continuing education hours or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And Amy's second question was, what is the situation with for-profit schools? Especially this is my addition. She asked just what's the situation with for-profit schools? For example, like Art Institute or something that is a profit school. Is that counted the same as nonprofit schools when you're making recommendations or going through the assessment?
If you're feeling that it is appropriate, as long as there's a rationale that's well stated, then yes, that can be included. But again, the emphasis isn't so much on the school as much as why would that be a recommendation, and how, in what context would that make sense for this student? Yeah.
No, that makes total sense. And I think that's the thing, Rachel, that I try to emphasize with a lot of people as well. It's not that you have to write certain things, as long as you can justify or provide the the documentation, say, here's why I did this, and this is my thinking behind it. That's what we're looking for. So Marjorie asks, after the application is begun, how long does the individual have before taking the assessment?
Well, when the application is complete, you will be notified that you can take the assessment, and what we say in the email is it needs to be taken within 6 months of that date.
So you've got a 6 months. And how long does it usually take for the committee to review an application and get to that point of, yes, you're ready to move on to the assessment, or no, you need a little bit more time, or here are the things you need to consider?
Well, once you take the assessment, we want to allow about 6 to 8 weeks for the word to get back to the candidate. We're all volunteers, and honestly, the evaluator the evaluators take this so seriously and work so hard. We're trying to cut down that time. We're trying to do it quicker, but
Right.
it does take a few weeks. As far as needing more in the early stages, we want to work with you. I mean, we want to, if you're not ready for the assessment, we want to talk with you about, being ready and what you need to be doing in order to get to the point that you're ready for the assessment.
Yeah, and I think that's go ahead, Rachel.
Piece, I'm sorry, Cindy. I just want to add one part. We recognize that getting to the point of taking the assessment can be very stressful and very anxiety provoking. We also know that waiting for a response after you've completed your assessment is also anxiety producing. So we really are trying very hard to minimize that. And while, as Steve said, 8 weeks is the outside, we're really working very hard to make that much faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that,
Cindy,
yes.
Excuse me, there's also questions in the chat session.
Yes. If you have, and that brings me up a good point. And if you do have questions, put them in the Q&A. It's easier for us to go through, but we'll go through some. And if we don't get to your questions, we'll be able to post them on an FAQ on the website as well. But the commission wants to work with you and see you be successful. So don't hesitate to go through this process. A lot of times I find people think they're not ready when they truly are. So that's, don't sell yourself short. And if there's any questions, you'll be able to talk to somebody on the commission about it. So someone says, to clarify at this time, there are not examples of therapeutic consultants. There are not examples for therapeutic consultants to read like presented today regarding case studies or examples of well-constructed answers for demonstrating institutional and professional knowledge.
But we do have those. So if somebody wants to be in touch with the office, we do have examples. And again, we're hoping to have a separate webinar strictly on that area of specialization.
Yeah. And in the institutional knowledge section, would the comparison colleges be drawn from one's list of 30 schools? Like, do you have to use?
No, you do not. Your comparison colleges can be what you would offer to a family if they were sitting in your office with you. It does not need to be from that list of 30.
And do you recommend taking this assessment after a few years of experience working with students, or can one take it right after finishing their certification from UCLA or UC Irvine? And that's a really good question.
We don't see this as something that is done by those who are just starting, because CEP is not a networking organization. I mean, we have great networking associations, and so the typical and I'm always guarded in saying this, but typically people will get their certificate, be active in one or all of the professional associations, and then after a few years, then they sit for the examination.
Yeah. But I think it's important for you and those of you who are doing the certificate programs or maybe just starting out to know that this is a goal that you have down the road. I know I go through and we introduce this in my UCLA class, and many people recognize, okay, I can't do this now, but I am setting that goal. And I think that's a key thing for our profession as well.
The one piece I would add to that is that when you are looking at or compiling your 30 schools, colleges, or programs, if it's easy in your mind to answer all 30 without many, many hours of studying, then that's an indication to you that you might be ready. And in truth, it's much easier when you've been practicing for a while. But that, I have been told by other applicants, has been a really good barometer for them, that when they can sit and answer those questions very easily, then it's really time to sit for the CEP exam. And you'll know when that is. And if you're not quite ready, then we as a commission will do everything we can to help you and guide you to the point where you will be ready when that time comes.
And that's why I would highly recommend, if you haven't seen the first webinar that we did, to go back to the website and look at it, because the interviews with people who said, here's what I went through, here's what my experience was, and this is how I felt afterwards, are very illuminating and really help show what consultants' experiences have been. We've got time for 2 more questions, and then we're going to wrap this up. Sherry asks, are specialties, LD, etc., taken into account in these assessments?
Yes, they are. As we said earlier, the assessments are really written for the applicant's area of expertise. So if your area is LD, we do have cases that will highlight the LD and will ask the same questions, but the case study will be different and will reflect an LD issue. Additionally, it may also reflect issues of first-generation students, or financially students who need not just merit money, but financial assistance as well. So if that is an area of concern, expertise, that will be on your initial application, and we will absolutely highlight those types of cases for you.
And that relates to that last question, or the last question from Patricia. She asked, for the student case section, when we recommend colleges, can we use hypotheticals such as, if the parents are worried about costs, then XYZ college would be good because they offer generous merit aid, or if the student has his or her heart on staying near home, then XYZ college would be appropriate. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Making assumptions and stating the assumptions that you've made, if something isn't clear in the case, is absolutely on target.
And I think that's the key thing, is you're not bound by exactly what's in there. It gives you an opportunity to do what Rachel and Steve and myself have said, is, share your knowledge and expertise. So in conclusion, we're very glad that everybody has been with us today. This will be posted on the website, so you'll be able to find the slides and the recording of the webinar, and explore on the website. There's an FAQ, Rachel mentioned, a lot of information there, and don't hesitate to reach out and email us. That's all also available. The website is www.aicep.org, or info@aicep.org is the email. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Anne, for making this webinar possible today on this becoming a certified educational planner.